here today when we say tell the truth. Because right now, the UK government gave us a response. Because the truth is of how we've got here, is that the City of London, which grew fat off of the stolen plunder of my peoples, off of the peoples of Abiyala, off of the peoples of Asia, grew fat. Look around you, look at these buildings. It is built on the blood of real peoples. When we stand here, we look around and we see blood. That is our truth. And if you can't see it, allow us to believe that our truths are therefore different. We do not need saving because we've been saying this the whole time. You guys aren't, there's this issue about how we talk about, oh, this is something that we've done, so we need to fix it. No, you don't. If Britain was an empire, and if Britain is an empire, because that is what Boris Johnson says it is, Empire 2.0, if it is an empire, then you must understand that you too are colonized peoples of the world. And you're colonized enough to believe that you are white. You're not white, you're Europeans. You have your own heritages, you have your own ancestral traditions that have been violently removed from you in order to believe that you are British or something that is not even true. And so we need to follow the lines and find the real truth of the story. The UK government is only an administrator for global international financial capitalism, which is imperialism to the rest of us. And we've been talking about that for ages, and we still don't get it. So when we talk about Extinction Rebellion, whose extinction? That's what we call the Ma'angamizi. It's genocide. And that genocide has funded and continues to fund this existence today. There is nothing sustainable about the way we live, because it's funded to this day on the exploitation of our peoples, of yourselves, of your futures, colonizing the futures of your children. But we can't just talk about this as a future issue because it is a current day reality. And so I should also speak about my family right now who are on the front line and have been resisting the realities of rising tides. But these things don't just happen because of the planet magically heals up. No, that's not true. The City of London to this day funds 15% of global carbon emissions. But let's not just talk about stats. What does that mean and what does that look like? What does that mean when billions of your taxpayer money, our taxpayer money, goes into financing fossil fuel extraction? And instead of hospitals for us, because there's not even enough hospitals here in the UK for when things really get bad. We thought COVID was bad. What happens when London itself is flooded? Who is going to do the adaptation? And this government has come out and outright denied that it's going to do that. And I'm going to be very explicit. Our campaign is very simple. We said to the UK government that you have a duty, according to the Human Rights Act and according to the Paris Agreement, to support vulnerable communities. That means yourselves here as well as our communities. To support adaptation measures and to regulate corporations and interests to 1.5 degrees. Because after 1.5 degrees, we know that we're talking about the total genocide of our peoples in the Caribbean islands. We know we're talking about mass displacement to the tune of 4 billion people displaced by the middle of this century. What will those people look like? These are my families, these are our peoples. And so this thing, we can't talk about it like, we know it's urgent and we know it's happening right now, but it's not just about people suffering, it's about the people who are resisting and have been resisting. And that's why today's date is so important to us as a people. Because on this day 230 years ago, our ancestors were leading a charge showing the world what actual emancipation looks like. So when we talk about we will win, what will we win? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. What type of future are we trying to win? Whose future are we trying to win? Because if we continue to be out here and protest for our freedom to live here in the UK, then all we are doing is protesting and acting to live at the expense of other peoples. Freedom at the expense of the majority world isn't freedom, it's exploitation. Call it what it is. And the City of London isn't even part of the UK. It's a corporation. It has its own laws, it has its own police force, it has its own courts. And that is who Boris Johnson, that's who the UK government, that's how the system is perpetuating these crimes. Because we're not only talking about 15% of carbon emissions funded through the City of London, we're not even talking about yet the overseas, still to this day, colonized territories that the British state still has, where they're hiding your taxpayer money in offshore havens to the tune of trillions.
stealing African resources to the tune of trillions between 1980 and 2017. 947 billion was credited to the global economy by African states in the form of plundered thefts, in the form of our oil, in the form of our gold, in the form of our resources. During that, no doubt you are aware, we are all deeply, deeply implicated in the greatest crime against humanity that has ever been seen. And we're standing here not just to talk about love and care, because love can't just be this happy-go-lucky, how we feel today. It's not allowed to look like that, because that is not the reality for the majority of the world's peoples. So on whose side are we on? What are we winning for? What are we fighting for? And that's what we have to be. We have to be very honest about whose leadership that is and what we're prepared to win and resist for. Because people are dying for nothing. People are dying for nothing. So let's be prepared to die for something. And this police force funded again by our taxpayer money, the crimes, the level of crimes that we're talking about. Just a few weeks ago, I'm going to talk about our people's resistance both here and in the global south, because just a few weeks ago, we held a people's tribunal led by our wonderful Auntie Esther in Brixton. We called it the Brixton hearing. And the people of Brixton found the UK government guilty of being an international criminal conspiracy. Because it is, and you know that. So start telling the truth and the whole truth. And so there's a lot of lies that we have to dispel. The IPCC report came out that no doubt so many of you would have read. And it said that humans caused this. That is a lie. Humans didn't cause it. The majority of the world's people did not cause this. And they've been out here speaking on it for the whole time. Our campaign has taken the UK government to court alongside our siblings who are out here telling us that the UK government for the longest time as a representative of Euro-American imperialism, which to this day still exists, needs to be held accountable. And so the government has started to answer to the realities that we're existing. Because how can you tell me that you are safeguarding the rights of my family when you're investing my own money into their deaths and their genocide? How can you tell me that? And you know what their reply was? Do you want to know what their reply was? People, are you with me still? Their reply that their failure to act on the climate act, on the climate agreement, on the Paris Agreement, sorry, and not only their inaction on climate, but their active contribution to the climate crisis, to global destruction, to genocide, ecocide, call it what it is, that their active contribution to it was, and I quote, reasonably and objectively justified. That is a direct quote from the UK government, that your deaths, famine, mass starvation, flooding, the displacement of billions of people is reasonably and objectively justified. Justified by who? Justified by whose laws? By whose objectives? Just according to whom? Not according to the majority world. Not according to us as peoples, if we're standing on that side of history. And that's what we have to be prepared to do. We have to be honest and know that when we talk about people power, it is only going to be us that are going to create the laws and the futures that we need. Because the Human Rights Act, the most basic principles that we are led to believe about the foundation of our society, human rights, something that we thought was universal, the government is now trying to weaken that act. Stop judicial review so we can't go to court. So if we're not on the streets, we can't go to court anymore. They're also trying to stop us being on the streets to tell the truth. And so we need to be honest about where the real change happens, when we take power. And so we've said that enough today. So let's start talking about what that looks like. Because if these are crisis talks, we need to be talking about organising very seriously to win. And if we're going to talk about organising very seriously to win, let's start laying some things on the table about what we can actively be doing. And I'm not just doing this to drum up support for the campaign, because this is your campaign. And your support will decide where it goes. But because we have to be very serious about the very fundamental contradictions of our society. Which is that while we live here, at the expense of people whose lands are stolen for the sake of British corporations traded here in this country, in your name, people around the world need to know that think it's being traded in your name, and you have to stand up and tell them, no, not in your name, not in our name. And you have to claim that back, because until that point happens, they're not going to believe that Extinction Rebellion means anything to them. Because it's whose extinction? And that's what they've been resisting. And so what does that organisation look like when our communities on the front line and our communities resisting are under-resourced by our own greed, by our own idolatry, by our own egos that think that we are going to be the people that fix it. No, fix yourselves so that we can fix together and fix the planet. And what does that organization look like? That's the question. That is the crucial question that we should be talking about right now. What does that adaptation look like from a government that says we have no obligation to safeguard your rights? How are you going to safeguard them? And how are you going to safeguard them not at the expense of other people's? In what mutual coordination and solidarity can you build something that is sustainable and defensible? And so we're promoting citizens' assemblies, people's assemblies, where people are taking the power back and knowing that only you are going to take the power back. People's tribunals that will put the system on trial and therefore create our laws and the rules by which we stand for. And then after that, to connect that struggle and to build those connections so that our own institutions of people power, real people power, not elected officials that we elect once every 4 years, but real people power that you are empowered to be involved in the whole time. That our institutions of power that we build wherever we are should be supporting the resistance and the institutions of power that other people are building. And being bold about it and stopping the harm that we are complicit in if we are going to be bold about it. And so that's what the Declaration Against the City of London means. Because it's more than just a case that we are all just complicit in it. We know where the target is. We know what they're prepared to do to defend it. And so we need to be prepared to stand up and do that. And so